Good evening, dear friends. This evening, I want to share a small discussion on managing our day-to-day surgical patients with SOAP technique of progress notes writing and a problem-oriented approach to a surgical patient. Whenever we visit a patient as a resident, as a consultant, and whatever sphere you are, you need to look at the patient after your physical history, detailed examination, investigations. When you reach a level, you have a data after history, physical and lab investigations, you have a data. So then once you have a data, then you start thinking what and concluding what total problems a patient has, and based on those problems you chalk out what should be your plan. Now the problems can be the problems which are there right now, and the problem can also be the problems which are anticipated tomorrow, the problems which can happen after 3 days. So as a smart, I would say, a clinical surgeon, not all surgeons are clinical surgeons, not all surgeons are thoughtful surgeons. The common belief is surgeon is a person who operates. See, perioperative care is a single important issue to have a good outcome. A common issue which I raise every third day on rounds, a serious lung complication in general surgery kills 10 to 12% patients, and following a major GI procedure, a major lung complication kills 1/3 of the patient in first 30 days. So this is what is our thought process. We need to think ahead of the problems. Today I want to discuss with you, as an example, a patient who has, I'm giving you a clinical scenario, and then I will elaborate how do we write the notes, how do we write the problem-oriented notes, what should be our thought process, and how we can manage every single patient much better than our regular cursory approach, asking the patient, all is well, and the patient says, sir, I am well, and that the round is over. That's a very casual kind of approach, not a scientific surgical approach. Through this small lecture, I want to waken up the scientist within a surgeon. So we have right now a patient in our unit. I would like to discuss that because the resident staff involved has been given this as a homework, and I thought I will help them out with best possible protocol as I know of. Now most of you should be or are familiar with SOAP technique of writing notes. Now to give you a brief, this is a 63 years old farmer, known diabetic for last couple of years on irregular treatment, met with an accident while he was driving a motorcycle, was hit by a tractor trolley at a high speed, and he presents to casualty with severe pain on his right side of the chest. The duration is around 6 hours at the time of presentation. He is complaining pain in his chest, shoulder and upper abdomen on the right side. He is having difficulty in breathing. On examination, is conscious, oriented, and his pulse is around 112, BP within the normal range, and respiratory rate is 32. He is also carrying a CT of the chest with him. Now, be very careful. I am telling you the CT findings. His 8 ribs on the right side are fractured at more than 2 places. Air entry on that side is poor. Another important finding in CT is there is a minimal pneumo plus hemothorax. The gentleman also has a contusion of the underlying lung. Now this is his pulmonary injury. On X-ray and CT also shows a acromioclavicular disruption. He has some small wounds on his right arm and on the thigh. He has hemarthrosis of the right knee. Now, having said that, now what is this particular with this story, when we go to the SOAP technique is S stands for subjective, O for objective, A for assessment, P for plan. Now, SOAP is what is, S stands for what are the patient's chief complaints. His chief complaint is he has pain on his right side of the chest, upper abdomen. He is having difficulty in breathing. These are 2 main complaints. On assessment, what is positive in him? The positive is he has a chest X-ray, a CT scan, which shows us 3 things. More than 8 ribs fractured, number 1. More than 2 places, hemopneumothorax without any mediastinal shift, and a sternoacromial disruption. Now this is what the investigation is telling us. On subjective examination, whatever the patient is volunteering, we need to go in more depth. How did this accident happen? Getting into physics of momentum. How much impact? What was his speed? This fellow was high speed. He was hit on the opposite side. And the important issue you need to ask in every trauma patient is, how far did he fall? Did he fall down on the floor, right where the accident happened? This fellow was pushed around 6-7 feet away from his motorcycle because of the velocity and impact. So now he also carried an ultrasound with him from outside, which showed minimal free fluid in the belly. Now, the assessment part, when I try to assess this patient, I have, besides the injuries which he is carrying with him, and now how do I anticipate the problems? Because till we have in our mind the problem-oriented notes writing, the difference is a resident writes on the paper, a consultant thinks in his mind when he reaches a bed that what all obvious injuries this patient has, what all problems this patient is likely to develop, what other injuries which are not revealed right now may be occult in this patient. So, a patient who had high velocity impact has fractured so many ribs on one side and has some abdominal pain and some free fluid on ultrasound. My next important priority is to evaluate his abdomen. Now he is GCS. This is an unconventional but should be a trauma approach. This patient's GCS is 15 by 15. But the kind of impact he had, and there are no clinical details of history available because he was all alone when he was hit on the road. So I will order his CT chest and his CT head and CT abdomen. These two things revealed that he has a small depressed fracture of skull on the right parietal bone and an underlying small contusion. Now the contusion is picked up because we thought of an anticipated injury because he has fallen with huge momentum on a hard surface. Small amount of free fluid in the belly with everything else normal gave us a clue, and we found out that he has a grade 2 liver injury on the right side. Next, he is a diabetic. We cannot ignore the fact, and all surgeons, I will elaborate on diabetes a bit later, we must know some basics of diabetes until we are married to a physician, and she or he may not be willing to come at middle of night for every small emergency or a big emergency which has diabetes. So now when I come to managing this patient, what is my priority? The priority is I want his lung to be looked after. The number one priority is lung, for which now he is breathless. Now he doesn't show any flail. But remember, in first 12 hours there may not be any flail. The flail will manifest from 6 to 24 hours later. When you have this large segment of bones, ribs, broken at more than 2 places, the flail will develop. And it is very uncustomary to anticipate flail in such a patient. And now what are our 3 things which are required for this patient? 1, to stabilize his chest, because when the flail will develop, he will become suddenly hypoxic. We need to put a tube in to get his blood and air out. Number 1 priority. Number 2 priority, take care of his pain. Now, pain in such injury can be managed either by a posterior intercostal block or better by a thoracic epidural catheter with continuous infusion of analgesics. Depends upon what kind of your institutional policy is. But pain relief, putting a tube in, stabilizing the lung. Now, the best treatment for such patients is to give them some pneumatic splintage to their lungs, and possibly the first choice is non-invasive ventilation so that there is continuous airway positive pressure, the lung expands, the chest wall also stabilizes. The fragments which are lying loose, they come in alignment and the hypoxia is taken care of. So 3 things in the lung. Now the 4th thing, he also has pulmonary contusion at 6 hours of injury. When there is a contusion at 6 hours, the contusion is likely to increase. So what you are supposed to do? At least you can always give them lesser IV fluids than normal, because if you overhydrate or overload them, the pulmonary contusion will increase. So he has a hemorrhagic contusion in the brain, which will also increase if you overhydrate the patient, because wherever there is a capillary leak, the water will leak there because the injury of parenchyma and brain as well as in the lung. So we need to think ahead of the situation. Then we are watchful throughout for any indication of intervention in this patient. He has a liver tear, so that liver injury also needs to be observed. What are the next items? Next in hand disease is diabetes. Diabetes always should be investigated for a glycemic control. As a surgeon, I would like to tell you in next 3 minutes what all management you need to know about diabetes. Number one, remember, if the blood sugar is more than 200, the complications go up. So it needs to be less than 200. If the blood sugar in a critical patient is less than 100, they are also likely to have more morbidity and mortality. So hence, in today's scenario, say a decade ago, the target was to have a blood sugar around 110, 100, 120 in ICU. But the current scenario says that we need to have a blood sugar something between 100 to 200. That should be fine, that to have lesser morbidity and mortality. Whenever you admit a diabetic, your stat orders should be HbA1c to know the severity and duration, number one. Number two, urine microalbumin to know the renal involvement, renal function test to know how much kidneys are affected, and above all, the patient should be checked for neuropathy, because a patient who has severe neuropathy in legs is also a candidate in a long-standing diabetes to have autonomic neuropathy, which can confuse a surgeon by post-traumatic paralytic ileus, by persistent vomiting. The patient may have autonomic neuropathy beforehand, which gets precipitated or worsened. And the last thing is fundus examination. In today's era of medico-legal cases coming up, it is possible the patient came all right with you, and I'm just exemplifying, such things have happened. They are not theoretical. The patient was wheeled in because of rib trauma. All was well. Third day, he had a vitreal hemorrhage or a retinal detachment, and the guy became absolutely blind from right eye. Now, believe me, he is going to blame your chest tube on the right, which has produced blindness. So it is sensible and good in the patient's interest that we do a fundus examination on all diabetics admitted first time and educate them that look, you already have fundal changes because of diabetes. You can have decreased vision. You can have loss of vision. You can turn blind. I mean, this is not in a surgeon's hand. But informing the family and evaluating the patient is in surgeon's hand. This is what Dr. Eggleston used to teach us. I am just trying to propagate his teachings to our friends who are available on LGS and other platforms. We need to anticipate what will go wrong. Then every sick patient who is admitted in the hospital, he needs to be protected. Number one, for hospital-acquired infections. Number two, catheter-induced sepsis. If he has a CVP, if he has a catheter, a nasogastric tube, all those should be taken care of. Now, three things. Beside this, a patient should be given prophylaxis for pulmonary embolism because he is going to be bedridden, and he should be taken care of to prevent stress GI bleed, and lastly he should be saved from drug interaction and bed sores. So for exam going candidate, if you say so, sir, I will prevent all these things, namely pulmonary embolism, stress bleed, bed sores, catheter and tube induced sepsis, and if you can tell, if a patient has a nasogastric tube and is an oral breather, if you add to it, sir, I will prevent parotitis at any cost. Now, there is a technique to lead the examiner. When you say, sir, I will prevent parotitis at every cost, the next question has to be, how would you prevent? That area you know. So try to lead the examiner, but you have to do it smartly. You should lead also and let him not smell that you are trying to act smart. So that is about the basics of anticipating the problem. When you write this problem-oriented note, then you write the plan. Now, in this patient, I will write problem and plan. My first problem is 8 rib fractures without even a flail. What is the treatment? Non-invasive ventilation, so that before the flail develops, the patient is taken care of. Number 2, his problem is hemopneumothorax. Put a chest tube in. Probably that should be the first thing to be done. Both things can be done simultaneously. Number 3, the patient has got pulmonary contusion. Now, we all need to know the complications of pulmonary contusion and their sequelae. What happens to a contusion with passage of time? So, one important thing is that the contusion should not be allowed to worsen. The contusion may not increase. The reason is simple. You underhydrate them. You prevent infection in a contusion lung. Give them appropriate antibiotics. Give good physiotherapy for pneumonia not to develop. Take care of the pain. So, I am again repeating for the sake of residents. Number 1, flail, I'll put a tube in. Number 2, for flail, we will do non-invasive ventilation. For fractures and flail, we will do non-invasive ventilation. For hemopneumothorax, we put a tube in. Lung contusion, I have already discussed. Then we have evaluated that the patient has a liver grade 2 injury. So that needs to be observed only. Then the patient has got head injury in form of depressed fracture, which is minimally depressed, doesn't need to be elevated, but underlying cerebral contusion. So such a patient may require a neurosurgical consultation and maybe wait and watch. Maybe at times, if the contusion is increasing with signs and symptoms of localization or a repeat CT shows increase in contusion, then the treatment is anticonvulsants and diuretics along with antibiotics. Lastly, the management of diabetes. So, write down the points, the problems today, the problems anticipated, and as I told you, prevention. So what problems are anticipated? Any person who is bedridden in polytrauma, the problem is A, pulmonary embolism, B, stress bleed, C, bed sores, hospital acquired infection, and lastly bed sores and peritonitis. So that would be my problem oriented notes. And if you write like that, the point why I am forcing my resident staff to write all this is, if they write for 3 years like this thought process will be imbibed in their head. I wish all right thinking teachers to propagate this concept in their departments, and that will be very nice tribute to LGS system of sharing and caring with each other. I have a nice sleep and good night.